response, Santa Rita Jail.
An inmate death at the Santa Rita Jail.
They killed my son.
A grieving mother.
Yes, it should have been a warning sign.
And the biggest public contract in Alameda County.
It is blood money.
All leading back to a medical company with a history of problems.
Horizon came out to treat him.
They're responsible for his death.
Over the past year, Two Investigates has been looking for answers about what happened inside that jail the day 29-year-old Mario Martinez died.
CPR is in progress.
It's led us down a path of questionable medical calls.
I think they're a good partner.
And poor oversight.
Do you think Horizon is putting these inmate lives in danger?
Shocking claims from whistleblower nurses.
As long as it's legal, I feel it's appropriate, yes.
And money flowing to public officials. Now this mother wants to know if her demands for justice are lost in a twisted maze. This is a Two Investigates special report.
We are about to take you down a winding path of shocking jailhouse deaths, surprising medical care, and questionable political contributions, all of it involving inmates, nurses, doctors, and the Alameda County Sheriff himself. It's cost us not only in lives lost, but in hundreds upon hundreds of millions of dollars in taxpayer money year after year. But our investigation begins on just one day with one inmate, one death, and one family crying out for justice.
The medical response, Santa Rita Jail.
My son started having an asthma attack in his cell.
Not breathing.
The deputy, you could see that he was having some difficulty, so we walked him outside to what was called the quasi yard, so it gives you fresh air, because he said he wanted some fresh air, so the deputy did that for him.
For a 30-year-old male not conscious.
And when the medical staff got there, he collapsed at that point.
CPR is in progress.
He should have never suffered that way.
The Santa Rita Jail in Dublin, Alameda County's main detention facility, the third largest jail in California, fifth largest in the nation, housing more than 3,000 inmates. A cell inside Santa Rita's Housing Unit 6 was the place that 29-year-old Mario Martinez called his temporary home up until the day of his death.
In February, he noticed something coming out of his left nostril.
According to court documents, in early 2015, Mario had complained to his attorney that he was suffering from a severe nasal obstruction that was serious enough that he would be scheduled for surgery.
The doctor told him, yes, you have a nasal polyp, it's too big to be treated with nasal spray, it has to be surgically removed. A doctor, Horizon's doctor, told him that.
But weeks later, despite two court orders, the surgery still hadn't happened. Mario's mother, Tanti Martinez, says she started to worry because she knew her son suffered from asthma, a potentially deadly combination with nasal polyps.
He was starting to go through more inhalers, and he was having a hard time breathing. He was asking, Mom, when is the surgery going to happen? When is it going to happen? There's court orders. When is it going to happen?
Records from a clinic visit in March show that the medical staff gave Mario Claritin and nasal spray. Even though the clinician's notes say that patient states he can't breathe, has already tried nasal sprays, they are ineffective. Horizon faxed a letter back to the judge stating that the patient's medical condition is being evaluated and treated, and from their perspective, the court order was satisfied.
And I was so afraid that this would happen because too much time was going by. 3 court orders, it was not working. You know, Horizon should have taken care of the problem immediately. 1 court order to me was enough.
Mario's attorney went back to court, demanding answers and action. He filed papers to have Santa Rita, Horizon, and the sheriff's office held in contempt of court for willful disobedience or disregard of a lawful court order. The back and forth between the jail and the hospital went on for months into April, May, June, and July.
Mom, my breathing's getting worse. I'm going through more inhalers.
Despite multiple referrals, Highland said a surgery appointment would take 4 to 6 months to book. The legal wrangling stretched into the summer until Mario's condition finally reached its breaking point.
Medical response, Santa Rita Jail.
So as far as I'm concerned, the whole system failed him.
We have an at-risk population in the jail, and a lot of people have varying medical issues. And unfortunately, in this case, he passed away, and that is unfortunate.
The coroner's report shows Mario was generally healthy, despite an extensive history of asthma and asthma attacks, a potentially deadly condition when combined with untreated nasal polyps. His official cause of death is listed as acute asthmatic respiratory insufficiency. Corizon pointed out to Two Investigates that his death was ruled as natural.
And generally speaking, for as many people that come through our jail, we do a good job. Do things happen? Have things happen? Absolutely. But we do try to make sure they don't happen again.
And obviously, things are slipping through the cracks. And I'm sure they're well aware of it, but what are they doing about it? Nothing.
Mario died just 2 days before his 30th birthday. Less than 3 weeks later, Tanti laid her son to rest. She says she still has trouble explaining what happened to the 3 children he left behind, including a baby he never met.
My son mattered to me. I love him with all my heart, and I have to be his voice, and that's what I'm doing. I don't want any other family to suffer this way.
Mario was in jail, awaiting charges for attempted murder, but his mother says the punishment didn't fit the crime.
You go to jail, that should not mean you're going to die there. That should not be a death sentence on top of your sentence. And that's what happened to my son.
And it wasn't just her son. Up next, our path takes a twist and leads us to another inmate who died and another inmate who claims he suffered, all at the hands of Corizon doctors behind bars.
I definitely remember the blood and the pain.
Plus, as Two Investigates digs further into Mario Martinez's death, we uncover startling new details about a broken oxygen tank used to treat him, and hear from jail nurses who say it could happen again.
Lives are in jeopardy.
You've already seen one inmate die in this maze of jail healthcare, but there are unfortunately others. Our path led us to 2 other inmates, one who died, one who suffered, both allegedly at the hands of Corizon Correctional Health.
I definitely remember the blood and the pain. You're trapped in the cell, and and it's nothing that nobody can do.
Daryl Buchan says he was in pain, suffering inside a jail cell the very day Mario Martinez died.
When I saw it on the news, I was like, whoa, like these people, they're gonna kill me.
That same day, he says he discovered that his infected kidney stones were misdiagnosed by his Corizon doctor, causing him to endure 6 months of pain and suffering at the Glenn Dyer jail.
Do you remember writing this?
All documented in his own words.
I am now urinating blood and experiencing pain in my penis. Please take me to the hospital.
What do you think reading that?
It brings me back to those days. Your Corizon definitely put my life in danger.
The more Two Investigates dug into Corizon Correctional Health's track record, the more complaints of medical negligence we uncovered.
I'm a survivor of it. But like I said, there's just many who didn't survive.
And unfortunately, there was at least one more victim, at least according to another family, and executive producer Simona Ponte found him pretty quickly.
Yeah, this is him, Martin Harrison. We found him very quickly through his family's federal lawsuit. They sued Corizon and the county of Alameda over his death.
And what does this family say Corizon did wrong in this case?
Well, Harrison was booked into Santa Rita jail suffering from extreme alcohol withdrawal, and they claim that Corizon's nurses botched up his medical intake and his assessment, and that he should have been hospitalized, not locked up.
And Simone, the Harrison case wasn't the only one you found. There were others across the whole country.
Absolutely. When we started digging into this, we started finding confidential settlements and 6- and 7-figure settlements all across the nation. There were so many, we actually lost count.
So all of this led us to ask the question, who's keeping tabs on the contract right here in Alameda County?
The private contractor operates in the jail, which falls under the supervision of the Sheriff's Department and its top cop, Sheriff Greg Ahern.
I think they're a good partner.
And Sheriff Ahern is no stranger to Corizon or its executives.
Be successful once they leave.
Public election disclosure documents show Corizon has donated more than $100,000 to the sheriff's re-election campaigns over the past 9 years. And Corizon is the main sponsor of the sheriff's annual charity golf tournament.
And these people are my friends. These are my partners. We golf, so they do contribute to my campaign. So I don't think there's a conflict of interest. I don't deal with the contract.
That contract, the biggest in the county, worth a total of $237 million, has raised eyebrows from critics about the sheriff's apparently cozy relationship with Corizon. When we caught up with Corizon executives discussing service issues in Southern California, they denied expecting anything in return.
I think that's something that you'd have to ask the sheriff.
The company was awarded its current contract in Alameda County back in 2008. It's since been renewed 3 times.
But I have no say in who gains the contract off those bids.
But each time, the sheriff did submit a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors, asking them to approve the extension and skip the bidding process.
You knew the sheriff was accepting donations from Corizon.
Yes.
You knew the sheriff was recommending Corizon.
Yes.
And you didn't have a problem with that when you approved the contract or any of the extensions.
I didn't have a problem with it once I looked into the matter.
Supervisor Nate Miley, who with the entire board gave final approval, didn't have a problem either voting for the initial contract or agreeing to renew it over and over, even though 2 Investigates has learned that Corizon has also donated several times to his campaign and to one of his measures, $15,000 in all.
Do you feel that's appropriate?
As long as it's legal, I feel it's appropriate, yes.
Did you have any reason to believe that Corizon wasn't doing a good job?
No, I didn't.
But 2 Investigates found the grand jury report from 2012 sent to the Board of Supervisors that concluded weak oversight and a lack of formal evaluations put taxpayer dollars at risk with Corizon.
You don't believe this in any way as a warning sign?
No, I do believe that's a warning sign.
And the following year, more red flags and, quote, close calls from the doctor in charge of keeping tabs on Corizon's performance. Dr. Calvin Benton, an outside doctor hired for quality assurance at the jail, describes problem after problem in reports sent directly to the sheriff's department. In 2013, he complained about inadequate medical staffing, medications given to the wrong inmates, and an incident the doctor called a, quote, very close call that could have resulted in a fatality when Corizon refused to provide a CPAP machine for an inmate with sleep apnea.
Each and every one of those has been answered. So it's not everybody questioning their work. A lot of people agree with me that they do a good job in providing inmate medical care.
But the attorneys in the Harrison case disagree, calling what happened to him cruel and unusual in their lawsuit.
Do you believe that this case should have been a warning sign?
Once again, I believe, yes, it should have been a warning sign, yes.
You didn't ignore the warning signs?
No, I didn't.
Because of these contributions?
No, of course not.
Do you buy that?
No, I don't. No, I don't.
Do you think that money bought influence?
I think, yes, it did.
Influence with the supervisor, with the sheriff that she believes cost her in blood.
It is blood money. He suffered and died an ugly death. And that probably is the worst part for me.
The worst part for many others, though, was the fear that all this could possibly happen again. The next turn down our investigative path now leads to the caregivers themselves.
Nobody should go to jail and die.
Do you think Corizon is putting these inmate lives in danger?
Potentially, yes, I do.
And at the end of the day, the buck stops with Corizon.
Today, my law office filed a civil rights lawsuit in federal court.
There's no reason why my son should not be here today.
We allege in that lawsuit that Mario Martinez died as a consequence of the failure to provide medical care.
Yes, you're incarcerated, but that does not mean you should die in jail. So I'm beyond broken. My family is beyond broken. His children are beyond
broken. But nearly a year after his death, the pieces were actually starting to come together for the Martinez family. As they filed a federal lawsuit, suddenly the nurses themselves started coming forward, backing up some of their claims.
And it raises the question of whether or not the care is of such a level that the Corizon and the county are deliberately indifferent to the medical needs of inmates who are placed in their facility.
And they weren't the only ones sounding the alarm over problems with Corizon care. Jail nurses blew the whistle after Corizon laid off nearly 50 staff members at the start of this year.
Things can slip through the cracks, and this is the type of environment where things can go wrong.
Licensed vocational nurse Blair Behrens actually volunteered to be laid off. She says over her 24 years, she's seen chronic supply shortages, staffing problems, and other issues. And she's not the only one.
Staffing has always been an issue.
This nurse, too scared to show her face, says after the layoffs, nurses faced a scheduling nightmare of mandatory overtime, 16-hour days, and double shifts.
Devastating. Mass confusion. There was no plan. There was no plan. How do we get the work done?
Corizon says they were required to restructure the staff and move licensed vocational nurses, or LVNs, out of certain jobs as part of the settlement over inmate Martin Harrison's death. But in the meantime, the remaining nurses say they were struggling to keep up.
Do you think Corizon is putting these inmate lives in danger?
Potentially, yes.
And they say short staffing isn't the only problem.
We don't have some of the simplest supplies.
Have there been times that you're out of gauze?
Yes.
Have there been times that you're out of rubber gloves?
Yes.
Have there been times that you're out of the most basic equipment you need to do your job?
It has happened.
It's incredulous to me that someone would say that.
Corizon's clinical director defended their quality of care.
You're saying the nurses are wrong?
Absolutely, categorically untrue. I wouldn't allow my nurses to go out and handle bodily fluids and not have gloves to protect themselves. I wouldn't allow that to happen.
But Dr. Orr does admit that the layoffs did put nurses in a staffing crunch.
It's been a challenge, but at no time has healthcare been compromised.
But in the Mario Martinez case, 2 investigators found more signs of equipment issues. In an investigative report from the Sheriff's Department, Corizon's own nurses described how Martinez was having asthma problems and was on his hands and knees trying to keep himself from collapsing to the ground just before he died. They noticed Martinez had a bluish color to his fingernails, and when they went to grab the oxygen tank, the crank to turn it was missing.
Some of the nursing staff ran to go get him oxygen to treat him because he was having a breathing problem, and that oxygen tank malfunctioned.
There was a key that goes to the oxygen that turns it on. When they rushed to take the tank to where he was, the key dropped off. When they went later, when the incident was over, they went back, they found the key on the ground. But they called a nurse from another house, so she brought over a tank immediately, and they gave him oxygen.
Even before we got to that point, he was given Claritin, nasal spray. Do you consider that treatment for what he was suffering from?
Here's what I know to be fact. Though he saw the doctor, though the doctor said he was probably going to do surgery, didn't give a surgical date. It wasn't like an emergency surgery. Had it been an emergency surgery, he would have had it that day, would have automatically been approved. But that wasn't the case.
Now, in those records, it shows that he was asking for help since February. Is that not an emergency?
Okay. Difficulty breathing through your nose, right? If you've got polyps in your nose, all you have to do is open your mouth and breathe. There's nothing wrong with him breathing by his mouth.
What do you say to people who say that you cut costs, you cut care in order to save money?
No one has ever called me and told me, Harold, don't do that test, or don't admit this patient to this hospital because it's costing too much. I'll tell you a secret about medicine. Good medicine is good business.
Everybody should be treated with dignity and respect. You're a healthcare provider, you're supposed to be providing healthcare, well then that's what you do. If you can't do that, well then you're in the wrong business.
But for this mother,
the whole entire system failed him.
And these nurses.
It could be your brother, your sister, your mother, your father, son, daughter. It could happen to anybody.
Changes can't come soon enough.
At the end of the day, the buck stops with Corizon.
And the buck may indeed ultimately stop with Corizon. After months inside this investigative maze, a sudden turn in the fortunes for Corizon and their $237 million contract with the county.
Lives are at risk when you make this decision.
More than a year after our investigation began and we first started looking into the death of inmate Mario Martinez at the Santa Rita jail, the medical company responsible for health care there lost its lucrative contract.
Lives are at risk when you make this decision. Take your time and get it right.
Despite a passionate plea from Corizon's top doctor, the Alameda County Board of Supervisors awarded the new $135 million healthcare contract to a different private company, California Forensic Medical Group.
4 ayes, 1 abstention. Motion passes.
But 2 Investigates has learned this new company also has an extensive legal history, facing more than 80 federal cases in California in the last decade. And in Santa Cruz County, a civil grand jury slammed the company for having twice the number of deaths as what the federal government says is statistically likely. Nevertheless, CFMG's CEO defended his company's track record.
We work very hard to make sure that we do everything we can to avoid mistakes, and sometimes people do make mistakes, and when they do, we try to learn from those mistakes.
CFMG's contract does include some assurances about its performance, language that wasn't in Corizon's agreement, including steep penalties for failing to follow a court order and fines for leaving nursing shifts unfilled. But for Tanti Martinez, another private company taking over isn't the complete answer. She says she won't rest until all the public officials, doctors, and executives connected to her son's death are held accountable.
When they're all held accountable, when the Board of Supervisors are held accountable for bringing Corizon into Santa Rita, knowing their history, that's when I'll have some rest.
It's been a long walk down this winding road, but it's not over yet. The path continues right now online at KTVU.com. Every report, every document, every twist and turn, it's all there for you under 2 Investigates. And remember, this entire story began with one single tip. Send your tips now to 2Investigates at KTVU.com. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on air and online.